But must be. Inviting a comedian into the, after spending no years in seminary, I have a lot to teach. No, but I have realized that being a disciple or following Jesus is not necessarily about how much you know. It's just about being willing to go, sometimes even to places you feel underprepared for. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'd like to talk a little bit today about something that's been on my heart, and that is, I'll tell you a little bit about myself also, but just the notion in the modern context of where life seems to be going, and that I've had a sort of an intersection with, and that is this notion of celebrity. I don't know if you're, obviously your generation is slightly more experienced than the one I normally talk to. So obviously you should be better at this. But you'll notice that there seems to be this incredible sort of pull to be noticed, in the modern context. That please notice me seems to be the shout of the generation, and why that is. I have a sort of a window into that because in my profession there is that cry anyway, because if no one comes and sees you, well then, you can't put food on the table. Let me just tell you a little bit about who I am. First of all, I was born in Ireland. I'm Irish. I don't know if my folks are here. They said they were going to try and make it, but they probably got lost. Can we just put the photo about, this is my family, Lisa, and we took this the other day for a magazine shot. That's my 3 daughters and my son beside there, and that's the photo. When you have a photo where everyone looks good, and then you say, I'll keep that one. Doesn't represent your life at all. You know what I mean? It's not like that's who we are. This is not who we are, but everyone was looking sort of vaguely normal. I've got 3 daughters and a son, and that's my wife, Lisa, on the far left. She's not a young girl. She looks it, but Sam, I only married her because I felt sorry for her. No, I'm also, so that's who we are. I was born in Ireland. I come from a family of musicians. For those of you of that age, my father was in a band and still is in a band called the Blarney Brothers. Do you remember them? I don't know if you remember them. Maybe some of you vaguely from your past, like, I remember a beer fest or something. Well, I didn't behave myself, but yes, I grew up. There's a lot of love and a lot of love, really, but also maybe, if I was honest, a fair amount of dysfunction. Growing up in that context, maybe a little bit too much alcohol, and so on. So I went to school in Port Shepstone, at boarding school for 9 years. I then went to university. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm just so aware of the notion of bad sort of preaching. I myself have been in congregations where, someone who really doesn't know much is speaking. And also the cultural understanding within each community. So, you do things one way and other people do it a different way. People come in, the word comes in this way. You have a personality, and every congregation, certainly every Christian congregation, has its own personality. And I remember one of the first times I went to church as an adult, because I grew up Catholic. I don't know if anyone's had the Catholic upbringing. This is not a knock, by the way. This is just I was in Ireland, Catholic, brought up, and when I was growing up, the service was in Latin, which I find is challenging. I understand there's a tradition around that, but as a sort of 5-year-old, you're just thinking if I'm good enough, I'll get an ice cream, And so I grew up with that, and but then as an adult, I remember getting invited to church, and then you arrive in, and people greet you. You don't know, you're not really sure. It's great. You get inside, the music comes up, and you don't know those songs. but obviously so the words are up and you feel under pressure to sing. And it's not like karaoke, the dot doesn't move. So, you feel a bit awkward, and then you get up here, and then the minister often comes up and says, right, it's time for the offering, and it's sort of, whoa, dinosaur arms, as I call it. Don't touch the basket, So it can be, all I know is that it can, culturally and from a personality point of view, it can be a little bit alienating, I suppose, if you're not used to the culture of the day. And if I do something that's out of place within your culture, I'm apologizing up front. I really, and it's no disrespect. I'm just going to try and be myself today. I am on the scale of ADD also, which is a positive. It's good for you. It increases if once you finish school. If you can finish, because if there's a wild animal in the bush, I would notice it first. Look, I could forget about it again, then notice it again, especially if there's a chocolate. But so some of the structure around how I think, and it might seem a bit fractured, but if you just stay with me, I'm hoping it's going to make sense. So these are all disclaimers. So basically, I grew up in a family that was fairly unconventional. Crazy is what a lot of people might say. A lot of love, though. I must say that. I had a lot of love from my parents. So then I went to study, and I was just chatting about that earlier, that I studied psychology. That was going to be my major. And but what I found is that my lecturers at the university that I was at were basically crazy. Some of them like on the scale of like Tourette's and like bitter. I was thinking, hey, this isn't working for them. I don't know if I want to, if it's not working for them and they're supposed to be the experts, I don't really fancy this idea. So I said, no, these people are. So then I thought, well, I'd taken drama as an extra subject. I thought, well, I'll do that. And I enjoyed that because there was a little bit more mystery, and obviously I come from an artistic background, so I thought, hey, I fit in here a bit better. And but then I found out that, like a lot of artists, they're obviously crazy. And then a long time passed, and eventually I became a Christian. And you'll never guess what I found out. A lot of them are crazy. And but what I have realized is that we are connecting and asking for help from the one person in the entire universe who can actually help change the human heart and character, the actual DNA of a person. And that's what I found, and that's Jesus, And so people think I'm crazy. I say, that's true, but you should have seen me before. I'm on a journey, and so it depends where you start from. Some people it's a 100-meter sprint. For me, it's a bit of a marathon, and I've already run 26 Ks. I always like to go back to the beginning to see where things went wrong, and it's always interesting in the Bible to see in Genesis that we see that, first part of Genesis, God created the heavens and the earth. And then he just stops there. And I always think, wow, that's underplay. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no explanation, no definition of, or there's no mention of DNA, gravity, molecular structure. There's no weak and strong nuclear forces. Nothing about science. It's just like God just says, "No, I just created that." That's the thing about being God. You don't always have to explain yourself, which is great. which is different from us. Because in my house, I have to explain everything. And then we see that God created the first people, Adam and Eve, who obviously disobeyed God. They're tempted by an evil being, Lucifer, and they get themselves sort of kicked out of that biblical Club Med to go and earn a living in the real world. Their two sons, Cain and Abel, are a little competitive. Cain murders Abel, and things go quickly pear-shaped for the whole Adams family. That's where it started. Hey, we said we'll go our own way. We don't need to go your way. We'll do it our way. We don't trust you. And of course, there's a lot of the younger people. I know what young people are thinking. Where do the dinosaurs fit in? I would just say in the ground. They're dead now. Or if the sun and the moon were made on the third day, how long were the first 2 days? These questions. As long as it takes to eat your vegetables, If there's only Adam and Eve, what about the whole incest? How did that work? You're like, no. We'll talk about that later. And my favorite one is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I always say, I don't know. But we do know that Adam came before Eve. And that's been happening a lot since then. If you laugh too loudly at that, that's a bad sign. Okay, so I'd like to fast forward. So we know that there's trouble. Like, living is not what it's supposed to have been. And we seem to have lost our way, and never more so than today. It's when, we've never been more connected. But we seem to be obsessed with being noticed, as I was saying earlier. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it. People are trying to find ways of shouting their name or connecting. Just recently I was so disturbed by, there was that German pilot who flew the plane into the mountain. Did you see that on purpose? And his motivation was because he says, people will know me. And how desperate do you have to be noticed? I mean, what a perversion of, or what a cry for help. I don't know what that is, but it's so disturbing. And I realized that he's not alone. I spoke to my son not long ago, and I was saying, what do you want to do with your life? And he says, I want people to know me. And I realized this is such a pervasive thing. Not I want to be known, I want people to know me intimately, but I want to be someone, And that worries me a little bit, because I'm in the game. I'm in the notice me game. As I said earlier, if people don't know you, then no one's going to come and see you. But what does that mean for us as people? Sometimes we're not even aware of how pervasive the doctrine of the day is, and how it gets under your skin. And you've got to keep refreshing your mind around what is truth and what isn't, and what is success and what isn't, and what is meaning and what isn't. Otherwise, you can start to think that everyone else is doing well and I'm not. And this is so prevalent today. Why is celebrity so attractive? And I don't know if anyone has any ideas about that. I have some. I think the celebrity is so attractive because it seems like it's love from a distance. It seems it doesn't cost us because it's from a distance. There's an influence, there's power. The one thing, of course, we do know is that, for example, money does not bring you. That's incorrect. The answer is enough. Money does not bring you enough, because money is never enough. You speak to people, they've got a lot of it, they've never got enough. Money is never enough. And that's the way. That's how it wiggles in. No, I just had a bit more. Then I'd be comfortable. I'd be better. I'd be able to work. I'd be able to sort out that problem. And that's just a symptom of the way we think. And Jesus had a lot to say about this sort of clamoring for the fast lane. Who's going to be first and who's not? And in Luke 14, 10 to 11, if you can bring that up, this is actually from the Message version, because it really has I don't often read the Message, but it has such an interesting take on this passage, and I'd like to read it with you. It says, when you're invited to dinner, go and sit at the last place. Then when your host comes, he may very well say, friend, come to the front. That will give the dinner guests something to talk about. What I'm saying is, if you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. I think there's such wisdom and truth in the notion of being yourself, of trying to relate to people in a way that seems genuine. You know, Jesus is giving us a lesson on reality. He's saying, not if you do this, you'll also find out what your friends really think about you. I like that notion. Because, you know, if your friends don't miss you, maybe they're not your friends. You know what I mean? You know, if your friends aren't looking for you, then maybe you need to rethink about your relationships. Maybe you're not friends at all. And I think sometimes we're so, you know, this sort of idea of you've got to be in the best place, you know, you've got to be the guy that everyone notices, takes away from the value around what people actually think about you. Also, I think you give your friends an opportunity to honor you. In either way, we find out what our relationship really is. See, I find I have to concentrate on being interested, not just interesting. See, in my profession, you want to be the quickest, the cleverest, the people everyone says, oh, that guy's funny, you know? Whereas Jesus says, through the gospel, why don't you try being more interested in them instead of being interesting? Why don't you focus on noticing your friends as opposed to them noticing you? See, that's the way of life. That's where we actually notice what's going on. And it doesn't mean that you're not interesting or that people won't notice you. It just means that where your focus is actually is going to bring you joy. I find this very challenging. This is one of the most famous quotes that people use in the Bible. If you could bring it up, the next one. Mark 8:36. For what profit a man if he should gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Now, I don't know if when you read that, how that makes you feel. I find it's so challenging, you know. Because I seem always to be, you know, forward-driven. What to do next? What's the next thing? How can I stay relevant? You know, instead of looking up and saying, Lord, how are we doing? What do you have for me? You know, can I trust you? You know, saying, or actually saying, I do trust you, Lord. What would you have me do? You know, my first place is, you know, the strategy. You know, what am I doing? How do I stay relevant? Instead of saying, Lord, my soul, how's my soul? How are we doing? Am I hearing your voice? Am I dry? Am I being nurtured by you? You know, that has to be my first point of call. Otherwise, I've noticed in my life I start dying. And then my relationships around me start dying as well. My wife, my children, and so on. I lose focus and I lose love for them. Happens so easily to me. I'd like to say a little bit about my journey to faith. As I say, I started studying. I became an actor. I met my wife. Things were going well. We eventually got married. We actually went out for 6 years because I was just testing her. There's a couple of young people here, and you're thinking that's a good idea. It's really not a good idea. Because you pay for that later. You pay for it because, you know, you leave your wife with whether she says it or not, with this underlying message of, I'm still not sure if you're good enough. I was just testing you, you know. And you pay for that. Not in obvious ways, but in trust, in her own security with you, you know, because you've already the subtext has already been written, and you've got to unwrite it, actually, instead of saying, I'm for you, I'm with you, let's go, And I think a lot of young people have that. Why rush, let's just see how we're doing, 7 years later, you've got a 7-year itch. Anyway, scabies. But we got married. I wasn't a Christian. God had spoken to me in my life, like most people before you become a Christian, but I never had any real notion of what being a Christian actually was, being a disciple of Jesus. That it meant that you live with Jesus all the time. That He's involved in your life all the time, that He's the fuel that makes you run. I thought it was maybe a code of behavior or doing the right thing or so on, And then if you got into trouble, you could maybe ask, like they said, there's no atheists in a foxhole. People are shooting, everyone's praying. Anyway, maybe that's just me. So we got married. I had my first child, Kaylee, had a second child, Holly. Things were going well. My career was really going well. Both of our careers were doing well. We were traveling all over the country and doing shows. And then I was away, and when I got to the airport, my wife said, I could hear there's something terrible had happened. She said, just get home. There's been a terrible accident. I got into a taxi. I involved my youngest daughter, and I got home to find out that she'd been killed in the driveway. That the car had rolled over her. Now, I know that the people in this room, if you've lived long enough, you know pain. It's not, no one gets a free ride. I know that. And those of you who have lost your loved ones, and anyone who's lost their children will know that it's like landing on a different planet. From one minute to the next, your world has changed. That everything looks, smells, it's different. My daughter was 2, my elder daughter 2 at the time, and she was there, and she was feeling very guilty. Was I responsible? My wife was broken. I arrived home, and I tried to rescue that situation. But of course, you can't really. But I did the right thing. I called the right people. I tried to be a good husband, because I realized that this was important, and it is important. And to do the right thing was my motto for about the next 7 years. But the problem with grief is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you go to these terrible places of depression and you can't function. So you think, well, I won't do that. I'll sort of cut that off so that I can function. I'll cut off the bottom part of the curve, the emotional curve. But the problem with that is when you cut that off, you tend to cut the top part off too. So you get this quite flat line, no feeling. You still have a mind, you still know what's right and wrong, you just don't feel it, And I carried on like that for about 7 years until eventually I was just so dry, really. Then Lisa said, now Lisa had a different approach. She went straight to church. She actually heard God when our daughter was dying. And she ran straight into His arms. And it's so often in our relationships that I found that the women seemed to be the forerunners often. They guide us, the men, past our pride into the kingdom, I don't know why it has to be like that. We feel strong enough, we can do it on our own, But she came to me and she said, I was in the bath, I'll never forget this. She said, I've been at church today, and what we found out was that if I go to church every week, it doesn't matter, the kids will see it as a hobby. But if you go to church, even twice a year, the children will actually see it, that it might be something to seriously consider. What do you think about that? That's called blackmail. Or whitemail, because it's pretty good. Now, by this stage, I had 2 more children, my son Declan and my daughter Grace. And, how she got her name was God's sense of humor, because He knew what was coming. Anyway, but that's it for another day. But I said, oh, that's great. I said, so she started going to, because there was a great kids church, the kids could go and play with a place called Grace down the road here. And so she said, why don't you come? So I went there and like a proper skeptic, looking at the lights. Oh, yeah, great. I know how much those cost. It was quite a big auditorium. There's been a bit of money spent there. I was like, hey, this is nice. They're not getting a cent from me. You know that vibe, hey? Oh, dinosaur arms. Pass the basket. But then I'm an actor, so I start looking for the bad performance. You know what I mean? Someone playing the role, you know that? So, but then I couldn't really see what was going on. I was like, there's something going on here, but I'm looking for where's the con? Where's the angle? I couldn't really find it, and that didn't really fit the stereotype. It wasn't all sort of dulcet tones and forsooth and bequests. Those words that you didn't understand? I grew up with that, using big words. I say now as a joke, sometimes I use big words I don't understand, so I can see more photosynthesis. And I think sometimes in biblical circles, there is that notion that if we use old King James words, that it's more holy, And that maybe if you understand, but it's about communication and God's love and so on. So anyway, I arrived then, and eventually I was going every week. And then I'm the first guy in the car. Come on, we're late. And then one day I was sitting in the congregation, and I didn't have it wasn't like an altar call moment. I had a vision of myself, like a car had rolled off the edge of the cliff, and then you think everyone's died in the car, but actually there's a root, a little tree, and then there's the guy holding on to that. Like in a movie? That was me. I had a picture of myself holding on to this root. And I could just see I was so tired, like exhausted, And then I always say to people when they find out I'm a Christian, because they can't believe it, how can you be a Christian and a comedian? That's for another day. But I say, well, either God spoke to me or I'm crazy, and either one is a perfectly viable option. But I remember I was hanging on to the root, and God said, let go. I'll catch you. And I remember having this conversation with God and saying, you don't understand, if I let go now, I'm going to crash and burn, I'm going to shatter into a million little pieces. But like a lot of your experiences with God is that He's incredibly gentle, I just remember just saying, let go. I'll catch you. So that day in a chair, with no provocation, no one saying to me, you got to or you have to. I didn't put my hand up. I didn't walk forward. I just said, okay, Lord, thank you. I'm going to let go now. And that's what I did. I made that decision. And from that day, my life, and it's funny, life returned, I felt again, the water of life. When God says, I'm the water, I bring a wellspring within you, I understand, because I was so dry. I cried, I laughed, because, you think that only joy is what you miss. You miss everything. You miss feeling, you miss the highs and lows of life are important, You can't get past that stuff. And God is slowly, He's in the process of healing me, and that's my journey. That's why I'm here today. And if you told me 8 years ago I'd be standing in front of a church telling a story, I'd tell you you're crazy. People say, how can you be now, most people ask, how can you be a Christian and a comedian? But they don't ask that to other people. They don't say, how can you be an accountant and a Christian? Well, maybe they should, hey, because have you seen the way these guys do? Have you noticed this is like a double standard? Have you noticed that? Anyway, but really it's not like that. It's God has made me a certain way, I realize I can't be like Michelle, not only because I'm not a woman, but because I'm not made that way. But He's made me my way, and I can be the best version of myself, And I think that's something to remember. I always thought you had to be a certain type of person to enter the kingdom, have all your ducks in a row, and blah, blah. Of course, that's the anti-message. That's not the message. The message is you don't have your ducks in a row. You will never have them in a row without me, that's for sure. So come as you are. And that's what I found out. And just for those who are interested, because you push boundaries as a comedian, you think you mock people, it's not really like that. It's a bit like playing rugby. Everyone understands the rules when you're on the field, hey? If you tackle someone, somebody says, hey, what are you doing? No, those are the rules. And with being a comedian, it's a bit like that. You come to see a show, and the rules are that we push the boundaries of the way we think and socially and so on. What you don't do is, as a rugby player, you don't tackle, pensioners in the supermarket. Hey, you don't, because that's not the rules. And the same with me, I'm not that guy all the time, There's a time and a place for that, and does that make sense? Does that sort of make sense, guys? Thank you. Thank you for that. But just getting back to the notion of celebrity, not long ago, I cracked my rib, and I had to go on stage. And, I didn't appreciate my ribs before. But boy, when I cracked them, I appreciated them, eh? I became so aware of how sore they were. And, our egos are a bit like that. When they're in good shape, you don't really notice them. But when they're in bad shape, boy, they draw a lot of attention to themselves. Eh? And that seems to be the way we are. We are so disconnected from our spirit in the modern context that our souls and our egos are always crying out for attention. Maybe I'm wrong. This is how I'm seeing it. That it's like if you've got a sore toe, you notice it. And our egos are so almost like they're inflated. You've got to keep monitoring ourselves, because we seem to think that these problems are for young people, and maybe it is, but it's for all of us. Who got to do the flower arranging this week, and who's in the front, and who's getting noticed. This is a challenge for all of us, because we're human. How are we doing in the social strata? Who's more important? Because essentially we've got to find our joy, our belonging in Jesus, We've got to trust that He is enough for us. That His kingdom is enough, and that He is. I realized that my problem was that I thought Jesus was a small God. He was puny. Meanwhile, He's massive. He's huge. He's the Creator. And the Word in John, we see that through Jesus everything was created. I mean, everything was created. How big is Jesus? How powerful is He? And I've realized I had to resize Jesus in my life, that He is enough for me. And that if I look to Him, everything else makes sense. That's what I've realized. That I can still be me as long as I look to Him first. And that has been I do it very imperfectly. Sorry, guys. I really imperfectly, badly. But I know now that is the truth for me. God has made us as originals for a reason. He has a plan, a mission that supersedes yours, no matter how great yours is. He is the maker and the conductor of the life song of all life on this planet and whatever other planets there are. And God is always moving people. I heard something the other day that really struck me. And I hope you won't think I'm being offensive when I say this. But sometimes I think we say when we get to a certain time in our life, that in a way we're hanging around. We're waiting around. Whereas Jesus, when I look at the Bible, when I look at the mission that Jesus has for us, He's saying, if you're not dead, you're not done. If you're not dead, you're not done. We're never done with Him. That when we're planted by the stream, by the river, He says that when we're in Him, we're like a tree planted by the river, that we're always green, right to the end. It means He has a mission for us. And I hope it's true. I believe it to be true, because there is significance no matter where you are in your life. What time, where you are, there's real significance there. And again, I can be speaking out of turn, but Jesus says, I will make you anew, being born again from above. And we can do it over. We can do it again. I love that God is the God of the second chance, the third chance, the fourth chance. And this time He says, I'll do it with you. You won't be alone. In theater we have, I'm just going to grab this. In theater we have a saying that says, the show must go on. Have you heard that expression? The show must go on. And if you know anything about theater, theater looks great from the front. It's glitzy, there's all stuff going on. But if you ever go backstage, you'll see it's a mess. It's a proper mess. And I think my life has been, for a long time, has been too much like that. That from the front it may have looked like one thing, but from the back it was such a mess. And I wonder how many of us are tempted to put our best foot forward and, do that. We're actually at the back. It's a mess. The show mustn't go on. The show must change, We want to be authentic people. I want to live an authentic life. I want to be able to, at some day I'm going to answer for it. So I want to at least be moving in the right direction. And I've realized that it's very difficult to over-communicate an idea. You think, well, we all understand, but we forget, hey. I mean, I don't know about you. Luckily, none of my teachers are here. Actually, my son's teacher's here, and I was a lot like him, so she can maybe vouch for this. Shame, those people all need medals. No, really. And salvation, in other words, we are saved. What does salvation look like? I want to just draw a picture, because I find it for myself it helps, and I hope it'll just help to encourage you. A lot of you have seen this notion where I'm just going to draw a person here. And then I'm going to draw a crown on this side, just because, we don't know what God looks like. And we've been separated from God originally by, can you see this long drop? Long drop. And we are separated from God by that, by what we've done, what's happened, original sin, however you want to call that. But the funny thing about Adam and Eve, people say, this big debate, Adam and Eve, were they people, have you heard these stories? Is it a story to teach us? Have you heard this stuff? I'm like, I sometimes say, don't worry about that. Don't even worry. It's not, did it happen? It's, does it happen? And of course, it does happen every day. The same thing they went through, we go through. We disobey God all the time. And so we think, no, I'm good enough. I'm good enough. Actually, I can get there. Don't tell me how I need to get there. I can get there. Look here. Run up. Straight in the long drop. So then we start to think, you know what? If I was a better person. If I was a better person, I would get there. So I'm vegetarian. Okay. These days it's banting. Whatever. Banting. Or, I'm going to be more present for my family. That is where it's at. Love is spelled T-R-M-E. Have you heard that? Time. I'm going to be with parties. I'm going to go to every children's party. I'm going to be the only man there. I'm going to talk about waxing. It's going to be awful. But I am going to do it. All these things. You're going to do all these good things. You understand? All these great things. So it's like a trampoline. We're making a trampoline, and all the springs are all these great things you're going to do. You're going to be a better person, right? So now you take a run. Now, obviously, not everyone looks like this. Some of them a bit more like that. Just don't want to be too, let's be general. All right. So now we've got a trampoline here. Now we're taking a run up. So we run up, and we hit the trampoline. Dish, dish, dish. It's worse now because you've got more momentum when you fall. Hey? Does this ring a bell? But now, and then other people are like, listen, I don't even know what you're talking about. I am actually not up there. I am down here. Have you heard that? I'm down here. But, I'm not as bad as the other guy down here. Because I've got a safety, I've got like a log. I've got something. Now this might look like a house or a Ferrari or a hot wife with Botox. I don't know what you think is great. Okay, and you have that, and the other guy doesn't have that. Huh? No, you're in the long drop, pal. We're just getting used to the smell. So, Jesus comes along and changes the playing field. He says, hold on. No. So, you may have seen this before. So, but what Jesus does on the cross, He creates a bridge for us. Not by anything we have done, but what He has done for us. That's called grace. Grace. And goes all the way down. So even if you think you're down here, you see it goes all the way. Look, you can grab on. Like those guys who climb coconut palms. Anyway, all the way up. And I draw a little shower here. Because we're washed, You're washed clean by the blood of the Lamb. That it's a freaky thought when you think about it. But of course, once you get used to it, it's one of those things that you just love. It's a bit like being the bride of Christ. As a man, you're like, no, no. But of course, we are. We are. It's wonderful. And then we have access to our Father because of what Jesus has done. And our journey to fulfilling our purpose is a slow one because God wants us to be ourselves, hey? I mean, imagine if God changed everything when He first made you. Said, right, perfect, perfect, perfect. Would you be you? I don't think so. You have to have. We have a role in that. We have a role. So it gives us time to become the best versions of ourselves. It's just incredible, really. And then I'm going to draw a little railing here. Because a lot of people wait till they're so old to cross the thing. Like an insurance policy, you think, we're checking out, better hurry up. Okay? But then we miss out on life. We're missing out on life, Life. God says, I'm the life, now. And just so we don't forget that, I mean, I know this is the very center of our teaching, but it's so easy to forget that it's not about us, it's about Him, what He's done. Anyway, I'm sure I've run over time, and I'm sorry about that. But, the closer you get to God, the more beautiful He becomes. They say familiarity breeds contempt. And that's true. But we're not meant to be familiar with God. It's intimacy. When we're intimate with anyone, we love them. And God calls us to be intimate, not just to know Him and know about Him, but to be with Him, to be intimate with Him. And finally, I'd just like to, if you can take these away with you, and if you want to share that with anyone, these are my thoughts around celebrity, because it is so pervasive, ladies and gentlemen. If you can communicate this to anyone, or even for yourself, it says celebrity can easily become an idol, and an idol will always break your heart. Always. Because it cannot deliver what it promises. Never. See? Delivers one thing, but it promises a thing, but it never delivers it. Never. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? You are the celebrity of your own life. Please accept that. And know that there's danger there. That you will tend to think of yourself first. Me first. I'm just a little bit more important than the other person. And only by the washing of God's Spirit over us do we start to understand our place with each other. How we love each other. How we relate to each other. How we put ourselves at the right place. And thirdly, you can trust Jesus to do it. You can trust Jesus because He was here in the beginning. He'll be there in the end. He knows you. He's known about you since the beginning of time. And He has an incredible plan for you, no matter where you are in your walk and in your journey. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I really thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.